So, hello everyone. Our project is called Teena, and it is a all-in-one digital musical instrument for live performance. I'm Josh Grebler.
I'm Thomas Jung. David Gordon.
Click. There we go.
So there are basically two aspects to electronic music composition: synthesis and arrangement. Synthesis is like making the tone itself. So it consists of an oscillator, which generates a signal, which makes a tone, and then those other components, which help to modulate the tone. And then arrangement, which is as simple as recording in a tune that you want to play, but it goes beyond that to something, for example, called sequencing, which is basically programming in the synth, telling the synth to play different notes on different beats. And our device will have all of that.
Now, the main magical component of a synthesizer is the oscillator, which is what creates the tone of the actual sound. So you have over here these four basic waveforms, which in analog circuits, you have the actual circuits themselves, the electronics making the tone, whereas in digital, which is the synth that we made, it's actually more of an emulation of that original analog process. Now, other instruments like the piano or guitar have way more richer, like more complicated harmonic frequencies. So to create those kinds of, to come more closely to those sounds, like you need to add a lot of these and manipulate them in different ways.
So MIDI, and some of you may have seen that plug before if you've ever messed around with instruments like this. MIDI is the musical instrument digital interface. It was invented in the 1980s when digital music was on the up and up to connect together all this digital equipment. The 5-pin DIN connector that's up there has kind of been phased out in favor of USB MIDI. But in order to maintain that legacy support with Teena, we wanted to keep the MIDI DIN connector, but we're also adding USB host and USB controller capability. So if, say, you bought one of these, I don't know, Alesis MIDI controllers, which doesn't have a MIDI jack on the back of it anymore, you could still plug it into our synthesizer and use that as an external controller.
Now Teena is a groove box, which is basically like a tiny electronic device that creates loops and beats. So a user could technically really just have this and have their own sounds and loops playing in just a matter of minutes. And it's really portable and multi-featured, so the possibilities are really endless.
So there's a lot of these kinds of things on the market. Why do we need a new one? So everyone's seen, someone using a laptop to make music, and there's a big disconnect between the musical aspect and the actual technology aspect. So then you have something with a keyboard that's a little bit more, you have something like this, which is an actual analog synthesizer, which is really big and confusing. It's super customizing. You can do anything you want, but the learning curve is really, really steep. So we want to make something a little simpler. And then the sort of in between goes something like this, which you can pay as much as $1,300 for, which no one wants to spend that much. Well, we don't. So we want to make something a little cheaper. We don't want to go too cheap because you end up with something like this, which is just absurd. This is a synthesizer, believe it or not. So we sort of went for something that's an in between that you want to spend more than a few hundred to purchase.
In addition to a price-saving priority, our other design principles when we were designing Teena, which I promise we will actually show you what it looks like, were that it should be expressive. Unlike a laptop or an iPad, you can actually get some tactile interface. It should be extendable so that the user can do whatever they want with it. It's not locked into one set of sounds or manner of creation. It should be compatible with those other standards, like I said, MIDI and USB MIDI. It should be open. We plan to release all of our hardware designs and source code for, ideally, an online community to contribute to. And it should be user reconfigurable. Any combination of buttons or knobs and sliders should do any combination of things. Boop. This is the Teensy microcontroller. As you might have been able to tell, we didn't spell Teena correctly. And the name just comes from the name of the digital microcontroller we're using to actually run the whole affair. This is Arduino compatible, so the learning curve for programming isn't that bad. It has a lot of support for audio synthesis and audio manipulation, and it's really fast and fairly cheap. So we thought it would be an ideal contender. Without further ado, there's our synthesizer at the moment. We got Tina Belcher down there from Bob's Burgers, if anyone's a fan. And In terms of expression, we have 2 joysticks, one of which can be set in a parameter and left there. It's a set of sliders.
So like you can set the x-axis as one thing and the y-axis as a different thing, so you have a whole like map of expression that you can mess with.
We managed to include a full keyboard, velocity-sensitive pads, and a whole set of knobs, as well as a little old Nokia display for, menus and interactivity. This CAD model is like 99% done. That's not just a mock-up graphic. That is, I could toss it on a 3D printer right now. Production time being a little bit limited, this is what we got. Boop.